Okay, so I feel like this is one of those news stories that's really huge. And yet, it's not. Like, Nintendo movie stuff is weird. I always think it's going to be a bigger story than it ends up being. I don't. It's like the concept of Nintendo movies. I feel like it's such a big thing in the realm of Nintendo, and yet, like, I don't know, people just aren't quite that into it. So I don't know. Whatever you feel about this, I feel like this is really huge news right here. So Nintendo does the Mario movie, and it takes so long. You know, they announced the darn thing in, like, it was like 2016 or something. Like, it took so many years for it to come out. And then that's not even considering just the decades that it took to happen at all. Even before they announced it, it was just like animated movies. You know, when we made the shift to CG, suddenly animated movies, there was just this explosion. They were so much easier to make. They were so profitable. And all of that time, it got weirder and weirder that Nintendo had not made a movie, especially like around the Wii. It was weird that there was no Mario movie during the Wii generation. So, and then of course you dipped a little bit in the Wii U. So I suppose it made sense that they got everything rolling again when the Switch was like a big deal. Whatever though, it took us so long to get here that my question with the Mario movie was always, is Nintendo going to be Nintendo about this and play it really safe? And this is like the movie that we're getting for you know, like, we're not saying no movies ever again, but we just have no plans. Like, it's so Nintendo to put all of this work into something, and then we're all like, sequels, and like, give us more, do more with what you made. And they're just like, I don't know, we don't really have any plans for any more beyond this one thing that we made. It's one of those many, like, double-edged sword Nintendo-isms where it's a part of what kind of makes them genius and makes their projects stand out and have, like, lasting value. But then sometimes it's like, what are you doing? Can you be a little bit more capitalistic about this stuff? We'd really love a sequel to this game or this thing. So yeah, point is, Mario movie comes around, and I'm just like, I'm trying not to get my hopes up, because in my mind, this should be, you know, the capitalist in me is just like, no, keep them coming. Keep making movies. Make Nintendo movies a thing. But I didn't want to get my hopes up because it would just be so Nintendo to not. To just give us a movie and be like, we have no plans whatsoever for another. It may happen, you know. Miyamoto will get an idea while lying in bed one Saturday morning, and then he'll start the slow process. It'll take 20 years to get the second one. You don't know, it would be such a Nintendo move. So it was fun. It was fun to learn that they were going to make more movies. I feel like it was a pretty short period of time where a short little window where they announced that we were going to get another Mario movie and a Zelda movie, a live action Zelda movie. So, like, all of a sudden now, okay, well, so the first Mario movie came out in 2023. And now we are looking at the Super Mario Galaxy movie next year in 2026, and then the Zelda movie in 2027. Okay, that's 3. That's 2 Marios and 1 Zelda. That's pretty darn good. 2023, 2026, and 2027, 3 years between 2, and then just 1 year after that. But even then, I did not want to get my hopes up that this was going to become a regular thing. Because it's like, all right, Mario movie sequel. I mean, the sky's the limit with Mario. They barely touched on the greater Mario world in the first one. So, like, of course, and it made $1 billion. So, like, okay, makes sense to kind of fast track the sequel. And then Zelda. It's Zelda. This is their first attempt to do a Zelda movie. They're doing movies now. And, like, Mario and Zelda are really the two. You know, I've given my doubts about the ideas of other Nintendo IP really actually making viable movies. I think if you're talking about viable Nintendo properties, it's Mario and, you know, like DK. It's Zelda and it's, like, you know, Pokemon, but we've had Pokemon anime movies forever. Beyond that, like, it's a little bit shakier territory. So I thought, like, okay, maybe that's still just this, though. They're going to do 2 Mario movies, and then they'll put it on ice for a while, and they're going to do a Zelda movie, but again, maybe not necessarily like a plan for a whole... I know there's like rumors that it's going to be a trilogy or something. I don't know if that's true or not. So I was still trying to not get my hopes up. But they basically just confirmed that no, this is happening. Like this is real. They are actually planning right now to release Nintendo movies consistently. They have said it. They have said it in words out loud. Usually around financial, like, quarterly reports and stuff. There's always like investor Q&As and whatnot. And in the latest financial briefing, it was, talking briefly about the movies that are coming up. And then it says, we are continuing to prepare for the ongoing release of movies in the future. And then they put this graphic right here. This graphic titled, Building a Framework for a Consistent Release Cadence. And it shows Mario Movie 1, Mario Movie 2, Zelda, question mark, dot. Not even just 2 question marks. You get a dot. That dot suggests even more question marks, stretching who knows how many question marks into the future. So, like, this is, again, coming from Nintendo, it's almost surprising. Because Nintendo, like, they've done a really good job, especially starting with the Switch, and, since they combined their home console handheld divisions, yada, yada, they've done really well about, like, providing games really regularly. But that's because they have all of these different studios working on all these different games, all these different IPs. So with movies, there's still just something surprising about the idea that they would want to, like, they're like, no, this is a real strategy. We want movies to come out regularly. It's the Disney strategy, the Marvel thing. We have all these IPs and we are going to keep, like, consistently. We're building a framework. That's what it says. We're working with all these different studios and basically coming up with a plan. In many ways, Nintendo likes to plan, but then in a lot of, like, creative ways, they don't. As I talked about, sometimes they're just flying by the seat of their pants. They're just kind of floating from project to project and doing whatever, like, whenever inspiration strikes. They're not going to be like, no, we're going to make this many games from this series, and we're going to use the framework to create these sequels. Like, we want them to do that more. I would love it if they did that more. So I didn't know if they were going to with movies, but they are. They are very, very purposefully building a framework for a consistent release cadence. The ongoing release of movies in the future. And, like, 3 years between Mario Movie 1 and 2, that's, like, fairly standard. I hear, like, an animated movie is pretty much, like, 3 years to make. But then Zelda, a single year later. Obviously, we can't know anything for sure. We can't, really glean anything from this because the years are probably going to be inconsistent. That doesn't necessarily mean we also get a movie in 2028. The gaps will be smaller and bigger, probably, and they're certainly not, like, necessarily promising one a year. I don't think it would be silly to just promise that. So many things can happen and movies can get delayed. Just look at what happened to Spider-Verse. Like, we'll see if that ever comes out. But seeing a 2023 and a 2026 and then a 2027, a single year between Nintendo movies, I don't know, it really does instill confidence that they may pull it off. Like, I mean, and what even would come after Zelda? Maybe they would just fast track a Zelda sequel, or if they're doing, the Lord of the Rings thing, shoot all the movies at once, and then you can put out the movies one a year, one every 2 years or something. Maybe, is there going to be a third IP? Or maybe, Mario Galaxy movie, and then they're working on, like, a DK movie. That's kind of my guess. So then, like, 2 years after Zelda, but then it's 3 years after Mario Galaxy. Whatever, shouldn't get too in the weeds about it. But it's gonna be consistent. There are going to be a bunch of Nintendo movies. And it's weird, though, because, like I said, I'm not super confident about turning, like, every Nintendo IP into a movie. I've got a whole video on this. I'll put it in the little end card. In case you missed it and you want to see it, I did a whole video predicting, kind of outlining the next few decades of Nintendo movies. I did make that video before the official announcements of the Super Mario Galaxy movie and the Zelda movie, so it's, at this point it's not going to be perfectly accurate or anything. but I do kind of just talk about which IPs I think are maybe possible and what Nintendo's whole, like, basically that was me doing what I would do if I were in Nintendo's shoes, and I did want to create a framework for a consistent release cadence. So yeah, if you're interested, go check that out. I don't know where you go beyond Mario and Zelda. Those are probably going to be pretty easy wins. I still have my slight doubts about Zelda. If anything about it is off, then it's going to be weird. And like the first movie will do really well, but if it's not great, then a sequel isn't going to do as well. And they have to be very, very expensive to produce in live action. So I really don't know. And I suppose at this point, it's not really worth getting too deep into the predictions. The overall point of the video is we're getting a bunch of Nintendo movies. Nintendo movies are like officially going to be a regular thing that happens every as little as a year. As little as a year. Maybe the gaps will widen after this. And we do have to see how these movies do. They do have to continue to perform very well. You know, if they start to see a decline in ticket sales, then that is probably going to affect their plan moving forward. But at least for now, they're like, no, we're doing this. We started doing Nintendo movies, and maybe they got some catching up to do. You know, like I said, it was so many decades without making movies. Like, we got to get on. And then they make one movie, makes $1 billion, and they're like, did you know a movie could make like $1 billion? Wow, we gotta really get on this whole movie thing. And man, I really do like. It is hard not to just kind of just try to figure out like how they're gonna do it, you know? Because again, like they don't necessarily own a whole bunch of studios or you know like a third-party game developer. They can go and they can lend them the IP and they can fund a game and all that stuff. And with animation studios, it's probably a little bit more complicated. And Nintendo has established and is now trying to expand their own in-house studio. That's what the Pikmin Close to You thing was. That was basically like a dry run of their own in-house animation studio, creating an animated product based on one of their IPs. But like, is that going to be a studio mainly focused on like shows and shorts, like Close to You? Or are they actually going to expand that into like a full-blown movie production in-house studio? You know, they're working with Universal and Illumination on Mario, but then they had to go to Sony for Zelda, for the live-action Zelda. So like, okay, you got a bunch of plans for all these movies. Like, who's making them? You know, are you going to just kind of go between Sony and Illumination? Or if you're going to bring in like another IP, do you need like another studio? Is it going to be your own studio, Nintendo Pictures? I don't know. I just think it's so interesting. Again, I'm always surprised when like the greater internet does not think Nintendo movies are that interesting. I think of course we're all excited about them, but like, I don't know. It just seems bigger to me. It just seems like a big deal. It's very possible that this is still, I don't know, it's kind of like when your grandpa, you know, grew up in real lean times and he remembered what it was like to be a poor farm boy without enough food on the dinner table. So like the whole entire rest of his life, he just looks at the abundance of food or like whatever. And it's just like, just extra cognizant of that. And like we grew up not on a farm. So we're just like, what are you talking about? So is that what's happening here? Because back in my day, back in the 90s, we didn't get merch. You were lucky if you had merch. You were super lucky if you got like a bad show of your favorite game. So like, but now like the idea of movies and like companies, you know, spinning off and combining all of their IPs and whatnot into like these kinds of, like, it's so normal now. But for me, I'm still just like, I'm baffled. Like, we got a Mario movie. I saw Mario on the big screen and it wasn't like a funny laugh along 90s Mario movie showing at a local theater. Like, it's a real thing. I don't know. It's still so novel to me, even just talking about this. It must be why it feels like such a big deal. Because back in the 90s and the early 2000s, this would have been a really, really big deal. But yeah, I don't know. Now it's like a live action Zelda movie. Like, go back and tell 13-year-old me we're gonna get a live action Zelda movie in 2027. Now you tell someone, hey, they're making a live action Zelda, and it's like, oh, that's cool. That's pretty neat. I mean, I probably won't go see it in the theater, but you know, I'll stream it or whatever. Yeah, that'd be fun.